Thank you, everyone. I now invite the Honorable Finance Minister, Srimati Nirmala Sitharaman, to deliver the keynote address.
Namaskar and good morning. Since the last few years, on the guidance of Honorable Prime Minister, we have set in motion a practice which didn't exist before. Budgets are placed in the Parliament, and post that, the Rashtrapati Bhashan is taken up for discussion. Then there's a reply given by the Honorable Prime Minister. Post that, a budget speech is spoken upon by the members of opposition and also the treasury benches, for which a reply is formally given. Then the parliament breaks for a recess, during which the proposed budget, finance bill and its details are taken up by the standing committee and the various committees. After that, when the parliament resumes in March, the appropriation and the discussion on the finance bill and passing of the finance bill happens, so that from 1st April, monies are given to the various departments. So actually, there wasn't any outreach in that sense during the session post tabling of the budget or even during the recess period. But it was an explicit desire which the Honorable Prime Minister expressed, saying it is all right that you have placed it in the Parliament, but it will serve well if all around the country, if the Finance Ministry's team goes around, explains what the idea is behind the budget, and then when comments are placed, you get from all over the country inputs, which, if necessary, may become part of Treasury's own amendment into the finance bill when it is taken up for discussion. And this idea has actually worked out well, because I think we've had quite a few inputs coming thus far like that on the earlier budgets, which we have, where possible, taken it up as the amendments, even as the finance bill comes for discussion. It has helped to sharp focus, fine tune, and therefore serves a very critical part of the finance bill's passing. And Mumbai being Mumbai, in all these years, the first visit post submission of the or tabling of the budget in the parliament has been the first destination to which the Ministry of Finance goes. And in that, for this year too, Mumbai has taken the precedence and the entire team is here. So instead of giving a long, winding opening statement and no key speech, the budget and its provisions are there before you. Every newspaper and every television channel, other than the think tanks, have found their print and electronic space to give their view on it, on specific aspects for each one of them according to the domain in which they are interested. And all of us, in our own way, have our own views on the budget. With those expressed views which are out there for all of us to read or hear, and with our own views, when we meet here with the entire team of the Finance Ministry, I would think it will be only right for me to hear rather than give one more speech. You heard me 87 minutes giving a speech which thankfully was the shortest. Thankfully was the shortest in my few budget readings. So I would think I'd leave it there and underline the fact, which is very obvious and but stated for the sake of reinforcing the thought and underlying its importance, growth is the main focus. We want to sustain that recovery, sustain that growth, which has kept India at the good level of growing, which no other country, except for one, I think, because it's fuel rich, has managed to reach. And the credit goes to the people of India for somehow absorbing all the little help which the government has come up with, either in the form of a relief or in the form of a policy between 2020 and today. And that recovery momentum should not be lost. And therefore, it was an express desire of the Prime Minister that the public capital expenditure should be kept up, and that is why it has reached double digit 10 lakh crores. That is the emphasis which is before you, and I'm sure that's the emphasis you would have wanted us to keep without undermining the growth potential. Other than that, everything else is all there for you to see. To the credit of the team, I will say that even despite these challenging circumstances and also these difficult times, fiscal consolidation has been kept in mind and also serviced. Therefore, growth on one side, inclusive growth mainly, and fiscal consolidation, both have been well established in this budget, and therefore Mumbai should really be liking it. We'd like to hear from you now. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam. May I now seek the permission of the Honorable Finance Minister to start the session? I now request Srimati Vatsala Jha, Principal Commissioner Income Tax, to moderate the interactive session.
Thank you, Megha. Honorable Madam, Union Finance Minister, Honorable Ministers of State for Finance, Honorable Deputy Chief Minister of Maharashtra, respected dignitaries on the dais, our invitees present today are representatives of premier business associations, various trade bodies, chambers of commerce. We have representatives from banks, professionals. We also have eminent business leaders, entrepreneurs, representing diverse sections of society, including women, and also present are senior officers from both direct and indirect taxes. Before we commence the interactive session, I request, a humble request to all the speakers to be brief in making their questions and observations so that we cover as much ground as possible in the time available. Also, a gentle request to avoid any repetitive questions. And another humble request is to keep the questions restricted to the announcements made in the annual budget 2023. Madam, I seek your permission to begin the interactive session. May I invite our first speaker, Mr. A. Bala Subramanian from Association of Mutual Funds in India.
Big compliment to you and the team for presenting one of the most credible budget with respect to budget math. My question is, I think government has done a fabulous job in increasing the capex, which has been growing about 60% for the last 2 years. In fact, as a percentage of GDP and the overall capex that is spent is one of the highest ever since 2004. My question is whether we will be able to maintain similar momentum in terms of capex spending going forward. Second, with related to the funding related to that, there has been a discussion about asset monetization in addition to the PSA divestment. Will there be any planned in order to take care of the funding? And second question, especially related to the bond market. Of course, as you rightly mentioned, the fiscal deficit is the most welcome step, and also the roadmap that has been given in the budget, which is 4.5% next 3 years. The related question to the bond market is there has been discussion about including Indian bonds in the global bond index. There has not been any mention about that, whether it's been shelved or will still be pursued at the right point of time in the future. Thank you.
we take a few questions at a time and reply instead of going one-on-one?
The next question is from Mr. Nilesh Shah, Group President and MD of Kotak Mahindra AMC, representing Bombay Chamber of Commerce and Industry.
Good morning, ma'am. Thank you for a growth multiplier budget with fiscal consolidation as well as consumption boost. Ma'am, while you have tackled two challenges facing Indian economy, which is fiscal consolidation and revival of private sector investment, there is one challenge which is a large current account deficit stroke balance of payment deficit. I have no complaint, I have a suggestion. As Bombay Chamber of Commerce, which is India's oldest chamber of commerce from the city of Mumbai, we are actually encouraging our members not to take overseas travel and encourage domestic tourism whenever they want to celebrate or promote their dealers and partners. Part of the mutual fund industry which I belong, there also we have taken a decision not to, take out overseas trip. We are only encouraging domestic tourism. I think this is something which should be supported by finance minister in the budget, and other people should be requested to follow. There are many suggestions from our members, especially small and medium enterprises. Some of them may get an opportunity to ask the question. Others will collate and send it across. Thank you.
Ms. Vartika Mishra from NASSCOM.
First of all, thank you, ma'am, for giving us this opportunity of having this interactive session on behalf of NASSCOM and all the industry members. I would also like to congratulate that the budget has recognized that India is a technology-driven and a knowledge-based economy. So we and the industry are with the government on that. Ma'am, we were very happy to see that the Economic Survey 2023 recognized that there is a phenomena of flipping and reverse flipping of startups. It also recognized that there's a requirement for a collective effort from the government, the regulatory bodies, and all stakeholders to actually reverse the flip. But we did not see any announcement in the budget, so we just wanted to know, is there a thought process around it within the government, and are we looking towards enabling tax and regulatory environment for the startups? Also a related question, the economic survey also talked about the simplification of the ESOP deferment process and the IMB certification. So again, if there's any thought process that is there within the government, we would really like to know about that. Thank you.
Sanjay, do you want to start? Or Ajay, do you have anything to say? Then I go with an answer. Sanjay to start or Ajay to start?
I'll take up the first one, which President of Mutual Fund Industry Association has mentioned. Sir, you are talking about whether we can keep the capex high even in the coming years. We have just concluded one budget session and one budget exercise, but the idea is to keep the growth momentum high, and as the situation evolves, preparation will be taken for the next year. But government is committed to work with the private sector to make sure that the capex and investment in the economy remains at a high level. Your second question, whether inclusion of GSEC in global bond indices, where that one is. At the moment, there is quite a bit of uncertainty at the global level, both in terms of the exchange rate and the interest rate, etc. This is not the right time to press the pedal on that aspect. When the global markets are a little more uniform, then at that point of time, this piece will have to be picked up again. Thank you.
Before I ask Sanjay, I'd like Mr. Balasubramaniam also to send me one note, if not wanting to elaborate on it now. What is the kind of talk which is going on in your community about investment in private domain? What are the private investors thinking about doing? What are the industry capacity expansion plans? How are those happening? What is it that you are reading? We'd like to hear from you. Because not just increasing, but increasing substantially is the government's approach towards public infrastructure building. CapEx numbers are reflective of that, 5.5, 7.5, 10 now. So I'd like to hear through you You can always contact me, send me the notes if you can, as to what is running in the minds of the private sector and their investment plans.
Sure, ma'am. I think we'll send you a comprehensive note on this. Thank you.
Sanjay?
Ma'am, let me try to attempt the last question related to startups. So you would have seen in the budget that we have done at least a couple of things. One being the extension in the incorporation date from 31/3/2023 for startups to get the various tax benefits. As regards the certification process, let me assure you for ESOPs. I mean, there was a request even during the pre-budget consultations to simplify it. And we have had a word with Secretary Deepam, Secretary DPIIT, who's very aware of this issue. And he has already increased the number of panels which do this certification by 10 times. So there used to be one panel. He has now, ma'am, expanded it to 10. So previously they had certified out of about 80,000 only about 400 of them, but in the last 1 month itself, this number has gone up from 400 to 1200. So the capacity has been made, 10 times. So I think this issue of certification should also be of startups should also be very quickly resolved. Thank you.
I would just like to supplement one of the points made by Mr. Ajay Seth on bond index inclusion, and also one comment on the startups and the flipping, etc. So these are not specific answers. They're just giving you the context in which decisions will have to be taken. In respect of the bond index inclusion, for a country like India, inclusion in the bond index has some obvious positives, but it also has some not so obvious negatives in terms of increased volatility, increased vulnerability to decisions taken abroad which have no connection with the domestic economy. There is experience in East Asia where a lot of destabilization has happened due to events unconnected to the domestic economy. So this is a balance which the government of India will have to keep in mind. Second, there are certain clubs, maybe the Gymkhana club, etc., where you have to wear a tie to get in and so on. But India's policies are made with India in mind. So if we get into this club, it will be with our dhoti and sari. We will not change our domestic policies to suit foreign investors. Policies, decisions will be taken based on India's needs. If that is acceptable to them, they are welcome to let us inside the club. But in order to get into the club, there will be no, bending over backwards or, changing our sartorial garb, etc. We will go on our terms is the general approach that India takes in these matters. Similarly, on the issue of startups and flipping, I just want to, as a matter of context only, India cannot aspire to be a Dubai or a Singapore. We are not a city state. We have a huge hinterland, and the tail cannot wag the dog. So whatever policy decisions are taken will have to be decisions that are suitable to an economy of this size and this population. And the benchmarks would be countries like the United States or Britain or, economies of that size, which do not have many of the exemptions that many of our startups are seeing. So I'm just giving you the context.
May I now invite Mr. Bimal Kothari, Chairman of India Pulses and Grains Association.
For presenting a robust and solid and growth-oriented and inclusive budget. I don't have the questions, but I want to make 3 suggestions because I represent the pulses and grain sector, which includes the millets also. The expression Sri Anna for the millets is really evocative. To make India a global hub for Sri Anna, the Indian Institute of Millets Research, Hyderabad, yeah, sorry. Yeah, will be support. IMR will be supported as Center of Excellence for sharing best practices, research and technologies at the international level. This is a great initiative, ma'am. For promoting millets, we need to adopt an ecosystem approach covering not only production, but also processing, consumption, and export. We believe promoting the consumption of millets or Sri Anna through welfare schemes will encourage growers and at the same time help advance our nutrition. Our country has suitable agroclimatic conditions for growing millets. However, we find millets prices often rule below minimum support price. This discourages the farmers. We would strongly urge a robust procurement system to support growers and encourage them. Also, I would request you to kindly consider a production linked incentive (PLI) scheme for promoting millets exports, as there is a growing demand in overseas market. My next suggestion is on the plant-based food from the pulses and millets also. To advance sustainability and challenges faced due to global warming, plant-based foods are becoming increasingly popular in Western countries. We in India have a significant production base of protein-rich crops. These crops lend themselves to extraction of protein that can be utilized to produce nutritious plant-based food, including protein-rich snacks, food for children, adults, and old persons. Plant-based foods can be distributed through welfare schemes such as midday meal scheme, ICDS, and so on. Promoting plant-based foods is sure to advance the nutrition status of vulnerable section of the population. A big policy impetus is required for this sunrise industry. Last point, ma'am, is on the fund for dal mill modernization. Such fund is sure to deliver multiple benefits. Modernization will enhance output and processing efficiency, capture higher value, improve food safety and hygiene, as well as advance consumer welfare. Modernized dal mills can attract FDI. Ma'am, these are my three suggestions. If required, I am ready to make a presentation to you and your ministry in New Delhi. Thank you, ma'am.
Mr. Milind Kamble, Chairman of Dalit India Chambers of Commerce and Industry.
Thank you, Madam. While presenting the budget, you mentioned the vision, it's a vision of the government for Amrit Kal, is an empowered and inclusive economy. And further, Madam, you explained the priorities under Saptarshi, and the first priority is the inclusive development. It means the intent of the government is a very clear for inclusive development. Madam, I'm representing MSME sector. So the economic survey has clearly mentioned the credit growth of the MSME, and which is a record. So we appreciate that, which is a 30% in the history. So we appreciate that, Madam. The another thing, 2 points, my submission is there were 2 schemes to support MSMEs. One for credit-linked capital subsidy for the technology upgradation, and another is a 2% subvention. These 2 schemes were the very great support for the MSMEs, but due to 2 years, they are under revision. So my request to the government, please roll out to these schemes, so which will help to the MSME sector. And the another for Stand Up India, Madam, Deputy CM and Finance Minister of our state is here. When he was the Chief Minister, he created a support for the Stand Up India. That scheme envisages that state government should create one conversion support for a 15% support, and which is the upfront subsidy the state government which is created. So my request is, your good office is to give the guidelines to the all state governments to create a support system for the Stand Up India like a government of Maharashtra. Thank you, Madam.
Mr. K. Nandakumar from Confederation of Indian Industry.
Good morning, ma'am. It's a very wonderful budget, especially supporting MSMEs. I'm also speaking on MSMEs. The budget specifically dealt regarding contract failure clause. That is, 95% of the amount deducted or not paid for because of any contract failure, delay in deliveries, etc. And it was specifically only for COVID period. My request, ma'am, is just when the 3 phases of COVID is coming down, The Ukraine-Russian war created a lot of havoc with the supply chain, global supply chain. And that has created much more problem for the MSMEs. My suggestion is to include this period of Ukraine also into this COVID and enhance up to 30th April or 31st March 2023. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Mr. Rashesh Doshi from the Federation of Association of Maharashtra.
FAM is a apex body association of various trade associations in Maharashtra. I just thought wanted to give a context. The mood is upbeat downstream among the traders, and they are all confident that the synergies and the benefits which will accrue from the wonderful budget you have announced will accrue to them, and they will be more prosperous coming out of the pandemic. Some small requests, Madam, for the small and the medium traders. Our government has always looked after the interest of the small and the marginal, whether it's the farmers, whether the traders, MSMEs. So if the income tax can be reduced for those people with a threshold of 1 crore PBT, to similar to that which we did for corporate tax, we agree that the tax, post-tax, the partners are not taxed. This will leave them some headroom to reinvest back into the business for the working capital as well as for digitization. And never before has our trader community been more aligned to the formal system as it is today. Thanks to GST and so many other initiatives, there is total confidence among trader fraternity in our Modi Sarkar. Another thing, Madam, congratulations to our income tax department for expediting and processing the returns from an average of 93 days in 2013-14 to 16 days at present, with a commitment to do it even faster. And believe 45% of those returns were processed within 24 hours. Commend that, ma'am. Just one request is, there are some old cases pending at circles, and if there is a timeline, if there's a timeline given for a closure for that, it would be nice. It will relieve the small trader who depends on the consultant, and also it will free his mind to concentrate on his work. That's a request if there's a timeline. These are a few big things. I also take this opportunity to thank our Modi Sarkar for recognizing traders as an important cog in the wheel of our ecosystem and presenting us various opportunities to present our case. We have always been well received. This government is inclusive and responsive. We remember in 2014, Devendra ji helped us in the LBT thing. Thank you, sir. And of course, since then, we don't have the burden of octroi. And thanks again to the Modi Sarkar. And more recently, when the GST was rolled in, Maharashtra traders have extended fully. We met Jetli ji at that time. And Mangal ji is here. He has always been interacting with our traders. So we thank Modi Sarkar for the recognition of the traders. Namaskar and thank you. Vande Bharat.
Next speaker is Mr. Surendra Mehta, National Secretary of Indian Bullion Jewelers Association.
First of all, congratulations, madam, and thank you for giving us the robust and growth-oriented budget. My question is in respect of electronic gold receipt. First, thank you for giving a clarity on capital gains in respect of conversion of physical gold into the electronic gold receipt. But however, when the physical gold gets converted into an electronic gold receipt by a GST registered dealer, the procedure for credit of GST has not been announced yet. And this has led to non-starter of domestic spot exchange, which was also announced in your budget. Thank you.
Sanjay, anything that you want to say on this specific thing?
Ma'am, two things. One, the previous request that came that regarding, the traders reducing, the taxation rate in line with that for corporate at 22%. So that I would like to point out, that there is a difference because for companies, there is a double taxation. So with respect to firms, there is taxation only at one place. So let's not try to compare the two. Nevertheless, we have in this budget, the FM has announced that the limit for presumptive taxation for small enterprises, including traders, will increase, from 2 crore to 3 crore. So that is an additional benefit that will be given. Litigation, there are a number of the government and the Honorable Finance Minister herself personally is aware, of the pendency, large pendency of cases. Number of steps have been announced in the budget, and we'll continue to work. The chairman CBDT only yesterday has announced that he will be taking measures for cases relating to TDS pending in, the commissioner appeal level relating to TDS defaults. That is another thing which we are doing, and we'll come up with other measures so that we are able to reduce the pendency. GST thing, credit for GST on conversion gold to a certificate. That part is also, we are aware of that, and we will be taking action to smoothen the process. Thank you.
I'd like to draw attention of Mr. Milind Kamble. He raised some important issues about MSMEs. Sir, I would like to bring to your notice a very important announcement which this budget has, implementation with a firm commitment to start the implementation from 1st April through further infusion into the Guarantee Trust Fund that will lead to an additional credit potential of about 2 lakh crore. Currently, the credit for MSMEs is of the order of about 1.7 lakh crore. That more than doubling that the potential is a huge credit can go. Along with that, the guarantee fee which was being loaded onto the MSMEs, the trust will pick up that burden. As a result, the effective interest rate can go down by almost a percentage point. So these will be a two major impact for availability of the credit. Thank you very much.
Anantanageshwaran, economic survey has been referred to by at least 2 or 3 of them. Anything for you to add?
Ma'am, specifically on the MSME, I think one of the things the budget has, which is probably not well appreciated, is the fact that suppliers would have to receive payments before buyers can actually claim tax deduction against that expenditure that they owe to the MSME suppliers. I think this is a very transformative step that has been taken. Because the MS and the survey also points out that the health of the MSME sectors during the pandemic years and further have actually held up, thankfully, far better than we would have feared at the beginning of the pandemic, which is evident in the amount of GST that new MSME tax assessees are paying. In fact, if you look at the GST data, 20% of the new GST taxpayers, 20% of them are roughly new assessees. The average GST they pay is around 1.1 lakh of rupees per annum, whereas the migrated taxpayers into GST from the old system, they pay on average 4 lakhs per annum in terms of GST taxes. So it shows very clearly that the bulk of the new taxpayers in the GST system are micro and small enterprises. So in that sense, the formalization of the micro small enterprises, which gives them market access as well as financial inclusion, has been happening quite well and quite briskly in the last few years. I just wanted to highlight these points. Thank you, ma'am.
I wanted to ask a question of Mr. Nandakumar. Mr. Nandakumar had suggested that the date should go beyond the base itself. Yeah. You had mentioned that it should cover the Ukraine war period as well. But do you have any specific justification for why supply would have been disrupted by the Ukraine war, as opposed to the lockdowns and the other physical disruptions which happened in COVID, number one? Number two, obviously, if it's extended to a date beyond the budget, you will actually give an incentive to people to default prospectively, knowing that the default will be forgiven. So that is obviously not correct. But even in retrospect, why would Ukraine war have an effect on MSME supply? Can you be a bit specific?
Yes. Most of the electronic components, because every process, everything electronics controlled. These SBU, the chips which are coming from overseas, they were all much delayed. Then what happened is, prior to the Ukraine war, most of the sea containers were also blocked out. So there was no availability of these containers to get the material into the country or to export also.
But that was all before 2022. During the last 9 months, what is it that has happened?
You know, most of the containers, ship containers were locked there. It was a problem is primarily because of the electronic chips not available. And that plus also raw materials, special raw materials for high end of the stainless steel, etc.
We'll check the facts.
I will get back to you, sir. Thank you, with all the information.
Now I invite Ms. Pinky Mehta, CFO of Aditya Birla Capital Limited, representing Bombay Chamber of Commerce and Industry.
Thank you. Madam, I would like to raise the two questions. One for regarding the life insurance related, where the maturity amount will be taxable as an income from other sources, where the premium will exceed 5 lakhs per annum, where the request is to increase the limit from proposed 5 lakhs to 10 lakhs and allow the indexations or a capital gain method, because these are the long-term policies. And for the purpose of calculations of the limit, GST amount should not be considered. And the specific exclusions for the premium from term policy, health policy, pension policy should be excluded while calculating this amount. The second question is that it should be clarified that the disallowance of GST credit on CSR expenditure should be made prospective and it should not be made retrospective. Thank you.
Next, Mr. Umesh Grover, Secretary General of Container Freight Stations Association of India.
Good afternoon, ma'am. The budget is highly focused on exports, and we congratulate you on that. This will reduce dependency on imports, create jobs, and madam, the PLI scheme has been extended. That's another wonderful thing. Just for the logistics of these exports, a lot of warehouses, multimodal logistics parks, ICDs, container freight stations, air freight stations will be required. They will facilitate these exports. However, since they come in the service sector, they are not entitled for PLI. So our request and suggestion is if they could be considered for on the PLI. And since creation of these new infra also is highly capital incentive, it takes 2 to 3 years. It creates a lot of employment, and they will facilitate that the exports, what is manufactured, they will ensure that these exports find their way all over the world. Thank you, madam.
Next speaker is Ms. Ujjwala Singhania, co-chair of FICCI Maharashtra State Council.
A very good afternoon, Honorable Minister. I today speak on behalf of women. I'm also the immediate past president of FICCI Ladies Organization. Thank you for the progressive budget. And it was a very welcome announcement of the new savings scheme, Mahila Sangam, Samman Savings Certificate for Women. I would also like to suggest there is a lot more that one can do for women. And it was a great move last year for women reservation in boards, defense, politics. I feel we should continue this, but we need to have larger numbers at the top position. For the mid-level, I think the ease of doing businesses, whether it's a small scale or a startup, by giving them more incentives, setting up industrial parks in all different states is very important, which is totally owned by women. Financial aids, etc. At rural level, job creation by skilling, and I feel I feel it is very important that they are given digital literacy and also a huge a loan and how to set up their businesses. I think to end it, I just would like to see the numbers are very important to make an impact. Thank you.
Next speaker, Mr. Jayant L. Lapsia, President of All India Liquid Bulk Importers and Exporters Association.
Namaskaram, madam. To compliment you on the budget is an understatement, because from the day you presented the first budget 5 years back, it has been a rollicking budget all along.
and there has been a consistency in growth. So I'm not going to talk on figures. I represent the liquid bulk sector, which contributes significantly to the customs revenue in the country. One of the significant highlights of this budget, as Mahaperival said, Devatin Korul, besides the figures of physical deficit and other things, and various path-breaking initiatives we had introduced, Madam, it was music to our ears when you said, Vivad se Samadhan tak. This was only introduced recently in Mumbai Customs by the Principal Commissioner, Sri Agarwal. That was Samad se Samadhan tak. But we were delighted when you spoke of Vivad se Samadhan tak. And our humble request would be to just ensure that it reaches even the investigative departments so that the litigation comes down and the business ease of doing business and also transparency in the governance takes good position and place, and the trade has good confidence in the government. Once again, complimenting you for presenting the 5th budget in succession, and that too, brilliant budget. Thank you, madam.
Mr. Sunil Sanghai, CEO of Nova One Capital Limited and Chairman FICCI Capital Market Committee.
Thank you. Honorable Minister, next day of the budget, one of the newspaper carried an editorial and headline summarized it very well. This is probably the best budget from 2014. So my compliments to you for that. And we all agree with that. You and your team is not only known for a good budget, progressive budget, but also a very focused execution of this. So my request to you would be if you can elaborate on the execution part of this in this year as well, because that's very, very important, particularly the current year is a difficult year. Since it's a revenue department program, I have one question related to revenue, which is finance bill. Angel tax, when it was implemented last year, the Indian funds which are registered with SEBI, they were exempt. This time, there is no similar provision for the foreign funds. Ma'am, what happens for sometimes a premium is paid over the fair value because of the control and other aspects. There is a FEMA guideline also which requires a minimum level of fair value and it can be paid beyond that. In that case, company paying tax may not be appropriate. So I'm sure the thinking must be something else if there's a clarification on that. Thank you very much.
Two things. One is, this 5 lakh limit on life insurance. So does it cover the premium paid for other policies, medical, etc.? So, well, certainly it does not. As to whether it covers the GST, includes the GST portion also or not, we will clarify that. As to whether it does or not, we will clarify, because the word used is premium. So it should not include the GST part, but we will clarify that through a circular. The other thing is related to angel tax. The only difference that we have brought in is with regard to its applicability to non-residents. Now we are aware, as you have mentioned, that there is, other than startups, first of all, for startups, it is not applicable. So that doubt has already been cleared. But there can be cases of other than startups. And we have, as I mentioned, we have just brought them at par with residents. But there is an issue, as has been mentioned, with respect to FEMA, because over there one cannot, sell or buy, the shares at beyond a particular value, whereas, for our purpose, for the angel tax, it's the other way around. So we need to work with that so that there are no inconsistencies with respect to the FEMA. So we'll work on that.
There was a question on the execution of the budget. So I'll just make 2 points. One, some of them relate to policy aspects such as regulatory reviews and many other aspects. They will obviously take the time which they have to take, but they will be initiated very soon. As regards the specific actions which are to be taken by the government, action is already underway. The planning for the enhanced central capital expenditure is already underway, and all the concerned ministries will be ready to spend it from April 1st when the new financial year commences. As regards the state capital expenditure, the enhanced provision of 1,30,000 crores, the guidelines have already been issued day before yesterday. So the states have been made aware of the amounts which each state is entitled to and the different windows under which that amount can be claimed. So it has already been communicated, and we are expecting the state governments to send their first batch of requests even before March 31st, so that it can be released as soon as the financial year begins. As regards two of the Vivad Se Vishwas schemes, one for the refund of 95% of forfeited amounts, and the other regarding the standardized scheme for settlement of arbitral disputes. On the first one, the guidelines are expected to be issued next week. It will include a system by which the MSMEs will apply through the GEM portal. That will take a little more time, but it will be operational very soon. The guidelines will be issued most probably in the coming week. The draft scheme for the second scheme, which is the arbitral awards, is also likely to be published next week. We are deliberately publishing it as a draft so that we can solicit the comments from industry on the scheme and take them into account before the scheme is finalized. That also we expect to operationalize in the new financial year. And similarly, the budgets of the different departments for different schemes, they are aware of their budgets. They are already making the plans. And our instructions from the Honorable Prime Minister and Honorable Finance Minister are that it is our job to see that as far as possible, expenditure is front-loaded into the first half of the next financial year. And we are taking all possible steps to do that. And every ministry is already on the job. And the Niti Aayog is coordinating this effort to see that expenditure is front-loaded into the first half. Thank you.
Mr. Gumanmal Jain, CFO of Hexagon Nutrition, representing ASSOCHAM.
First of all, I would like to congratulate to the government for the holistic budget covering all the societies and industry of the India, and looking to for the 2030 growth story of the India. One sector, the PM Modi last year announced that we will try to recover the try to rise fortification, and the nutraceutical industry is not covered in the budget. So some PLI or some product link incentive or some capex incentive should be announced to the in the budget, so that the nutraceutical industry can encourage the industry and recover the malnourishment in the children up to 20 years. And the second is the ATC is not covered in the new tax regime, so most of the people, especially lower middle class, will not encourage to invest in the LIC or etc. So fund may be shortage, or government may not receive the funds for the low cost funds from the middle class. So how it may cost increase to the government. Thank you.
Next speaker is Mr. Sudhir Kapadia.
Ma'am, 1 minute.
Yes.
So just a response to this, I would like to make one clarification here. Actually, the small savings schemes which are meant for the middle class, such as the senior citizen savings scheme, the MIS, these are not low-cost funds to the government. They're actually high-cost funds for the government. Actually, the rate of interest the government pays on small savings is somewhere between 0.5% and 1% higher than our cost of market borrowing in the markets. The government is consciously giving this rate of interest to benefit those sections of society. So it is not from the cost angle that, so I'm just making that one submission to you. Second, as regards the incentive for different kinds of savings, at present, it's a very complex system. You get so much for this, so much for that. The approach as outlined by the finance minister in one of her discussions recently is that we are going to leave this to the citizen to choose which savings instrument is optimal for the citizen. And there is absolutely no disincentive to anyone to save. And this is not expected to have any adverse effect on savings. It is not as though people save only because there is a tax benefit. In many cases, they take the benefit because there is already a saving. It can be both ways. So this is a neutral effect as far as we have assessed it.
Now next, Mr. Sudhir Kapadia from Bombay Chamber of Commerce and Industry.
Thank you, ma'am. This is a specific question on Section 9, capital A. It has been brought in the statute book since 2015, but hasn't found many takers in terms of finding a way to bring offshore management of funds into India. This is directly benefit the city as well, but also the country. Our estimate is we will get about $1 billion on a yearly basis of income if these funds which invest in India are brought to be managed from Indian shores. There are 17 conditions which have been prescribed. 3 or 4 of them are absolutely impractical. And the suggestion was that if we can relook at those, it will really unleash this opportunity for the country. Thank you.
Next speaker, Mr. Shikhar Chand Jain, President of Hindustan Chamber of Commerce.
नमस्कार मैम। नमस्कार। आपके द्वारा दिया गया बजट बहुत ही सुंदर और सर्वजन हिताय और भारतीय हमारी अर्थव्यवस्था की प्रगति के लिए मील का पत्थर होगा, इसके लिए बहुत बहुत बधाई देना चाहता हूँ। मैं टेक्सटाइल ट्रेड और इंडस्ट्री से जुड़ा हुआ हूँ। हमारी समस्या कोविड काल में व्यापारियों के लिए, इंडस्ट्रीज के लिए आपने ब्याज का मोरेटोरियम दिया था, स्थगन दिया था, और जिससे बाद में बैंकों ने पैसा वसूल भी कर लिया ब्याज का। अब जब पूरा देश ही बंद था तो उस समय हमारा टर्नओवर तो घट जाना था या शून्य हो जाना था, और उस काल के लिए अब बैंक कहते हैं कि आपका टर्नओवर घट गया तो हम आपकी उतनी लिमिट कैसे रखें, हम आपकी लिमिट घटाएंगे। दूसरी बात, आपकी रेटिंग घट गई तो हम आपकी ब्याज बढ़ा देंगे। अब जब जिस समय हमें अपने व्यापार को, अपने इंडस्ट्रीज को सुदृढ़ करने की आवश्यकता है, उस समय बैंकों का ये व्यवहार तो हमें बिल्कुल अनुचित लगता है। मैं आपसे यह विनय से अनुरोध करता हूं कि इस समस्या का समाधान बताएं। धन्यवाद।
बैंकों के फंक्शनिंग के ऊपर आपके कमेंट है। सरकार में बैंकों के नियंत्रण करने वाले अधिकारी तो मेरे साथ नहीं आए क्योंकि उनके घर में कुछ पर्सनल नो वेट अ मिनट। मुझे ये सुझाव चुप से पहले दिया, मैंने सुना भी, मगर उनको लगता है कि मैंने नहीं सुना। वो उनके मतलब इस तरफ और इस तरफ के सुझाव ये है कि बैंकों के वरिष्ठ अधिकारीगण इधर है, उनसे बात करवाइए। मगर शिकायत उनके आप ऊपर है, वो कैसे बात करेंगे? और नियंत्रण करने वाले इधर होना चाहिए, आपके सुनने वाले हम होना चाहिए, वो तो नहीं सुन रहे ना। सो मैं जानबूझ करके मेरे अपने भाषण दे रही हूँ, मगर फिर भी उनसे दबाव देके नहीं उनसे बात करवाइए, उनसे बात करवाइए। और सुझाव दूसरा भी है जो फाइनेंस सेक्रेटरी साहब ने बोल रहे हैं कि बैंकिंग का एडिशनल सेक्रेटरी इधर है, उनसे बात करवाइए। वो सही सुझाव है, मगर वो एडिशनल सेक्रेटरी है। वो ये भी बोलेंगे कि साहब मैं तो सुन लिया, मेरे बॉस को कह दूं। इसलिए मैं आज आपके विषय में कोई जवाब नहीं दे रही हूं, मगर आपका कष्ट सुन लिया।
मैं इस बारे में छोटी सी बात कहना चाहता हूं कि जो बैंक अपने नियम के अनुसार पिछले 2 वर्ष के फाइनेंस देखती है, क्या वो पिछले 5 वर्ष के नहीं देख सकती? क्योंकि 2 वर्ष तो वैसे ही जीरो में चले गए। तो अगर पिछले 3 वर्ष अगर हो जाते हैं तो हमारी समस्या का समाधान हो जाता है। पर इस समय मैं अपनी, चूंकि हम टेक्सटाइल ट्रेड से जुड़े हुए और बहुत कठिन परिस्थिति से गुजर रहे हैं, ना हम एक्सपोर्ट में कर पाए, ना हम डोमेस्टिक में कर पाए, सारा कारोबार उस समय स्थगित था। इसलिए अगर सरकार की तरफ से कुछ भी समाधान मिले, सहायता मिले तो हम पर बड़ी।
इसीलिए मैं आज जवाब नहीं दे रही हूँ, मगर आपका सुन लिया।
धन्यवाद।
और एक और भी रिक्वेस्ट करूंगी, आप हो सकता है तो आपके ही केस को थोड़ा और विस्तार से लिखित रूप में मुझे भेजिए। देखते हैं चुपचाप बैठ करके इन सब से बात करके।
बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद।
I now invite Mr. Samir Soumya, IMC Chamber of Commerce.
Good morning, ma'am. I'm speaking on behalf of Ms. Anand Singhania, who is the president and who was for a medical emergency. He couldn't come this morning. Ma'am, I want to compliment you on a fantastic budget. Ma'am, it was inclusive, comprehensive, and green, moving towards sustainability. And the breadth of talking about organic farming to digital agriculture infrastructure coming on the heels of the ONDC or the UPI Aadhaar is tremendous, including the libraries and the work of Karigar handicrafts. So compliments. I really think the vision you've articulated deserves great applause. Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, we really appreciate that the budgetary regime over the last so many years that we've seen is leading to greater predictability, and we are moving towards a much more stable regime. Our requests or suggestions are, just like you have mentioned to him right now, if we have some comments or views on the amendments for the direct tax amendments that you have made, is there a way in which we could have a platform like you're doing today where we could address them so that there is a better way to communicate if we have some detailed suggestions?
Is there a what?
No, when you're making amendments in the direct tax regime or the indirect tax regime, a way in which we could, right now we are putting them with the finance bill. Is there a way in which we could communicate our suggestions with you in detail if we have comments on the various amendments made?
There's never been a stoppage. There's never been a hurdle. You're welcome to do it.
Okay, so
then and now and in the future.
Okay.
Just feel free to write.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Next speaker, Mr. Khalid Khan, Vice President of Federation of Indian Export Organizations.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity, ma'am. As the apex body of exports from India, we would like to congratulate you on this path-breaking budget, which not only gives a fillip to the domestic market, but also has an eye on the international arena. Ma'am, we have a couple of suggestions to make in this budget. First of all, it's drawing a roadmap for developing an Indian shipping line for global repute. Madam, Indian exporters have done reasonably well despite the headwinds in global trade. We expect to end the fiscal year with exports between 440 to 450 billion. In the 2021, India remitted US dollars 84 billion as transport freight charges to foreign shipping companies. As the import moves towards $1 trillion exports, the freight charges will go up to US dollars 125 to 150 billion. Since Shipping Corporation of India is being disinvested, we request you to encourage to develop an Indian shipping line for getting a share of about 25% of this business in the next 3 to 5 years. Little tweaking in tax rates will encourage ships to be registered in India and the Indian shipping lines. I will request you to kindly look into this issue to make it India Atmanirbhar in shipping sector. Ma'am, our second point is increasing subventions for MSMEs. The budget has increased the outlay of interest equalization scheme by 23%. Since the global trade is slowing down, there is a scope to provide deeper subvention under the scheme to make our exports further competitive.
Just hold on there. I'm not against giving subsidies, but I also want you to tell me something which I'm not an exporter, I want to understand. So the question might sound a bit, oh my God, this woman doesn't even understand this much. I'm purposely asking you, I don't understand. I want you to tell me.
Yes, ma'am.
If the intention is to promote greater exports, in a normal circumstance, give incentive, give more incentive, give more and more incentive, makes sense. From your side, that is.
Yes.
But now when it is globally recognized that there is a recession in those geographical jurisdictions which normally are our markets, from where emanates the demand for India's goods. How do you subsidize here for an absence of demand there? The absence of demand is not on the price element. There's just no demand. And there's no demand not within India. There's no demand for your goods outside. So how do I incentivize here by giving more and more subsidy? Are you going to sell it for free? No. So tell me what is in your mind when you tell me, in order to promote exports, support us. Yes, we want to support you, but there's no demand there. And there are no more newer markets which are not affected by recession. Please explain this to me a bit.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, we are looking at only the traditional markets. That's US and Europe. Probably the demand is not in those countries. That's what we are also sensing, because our European buyers have stopped the consignment in India for whatever they had ordered to us, because they don't have place to even keep their inventories. But ma'am, we are not looking at the markets such as Africa, CIS, and the Southeast Asia, where the demand still exists. In fact, the rupee payment mechanism that the government of India is running, we should focus on those countries, because those countries have foreign exchange problem.
Wasn't the Federation of Indian Export Organizations?
Sorry, ma'am?
Don't you represent the FIEO?
Yes, ma'am.
Wasn't the FIEO tracking the newer markets of Africa, Latin America, and X and Y and so on, even the last 10 years? Wouldn't you tell me, therefore, what's been your experience? Why are you not able to crack them? Leave aside now, even earlier. I know some parts of Africa, there is a problem about foreign exchange. They don't have global currencies any longer, so they're not able to pay, and we have a different problem of sorts. Our lines of credit are also not taking off. But tell me, these are not markets which you didn't access earlier.
We have been doing that, ma'am.
Yes. So,
but
let me understand this.
Yes, ma'am. But the important markets that the exporters were focusing, as I told you, is the traditional baskets of US and Europe. Those markets have been facilitated, ma'am, but a lot of support still needs to come from the Commerce Ministry to us. And we are sure we will do that, sir.
From Government of India to us.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah. Our next speaker, Mr. Anant Goenka.
Just one clarification, this issue, ma'am, which was raised by Mr. Kapadia on the Section 9 conditions, some of them being onerous. I think the one condition which is being mentioned is about the 5% limit on the funds of residents. So, well, this particular section 9A, has been brought in specifically for foreign funds by non-residents. And so if we exclude, this particular condition, then we'll in fact, there can be, cases for round tripping. So that's, our concern. And that's why, we don't want to actually remove this condition, because this is essentially for foreigners.
Mr. Anant Goenka, co-chair of FICCI Maharashtra State Council.
Nirmala ji, I'm going to take one step. Congratulations on a very good budget. I add to all the line of compliments you've been getting. I think it's really one of the better budgets we've seen, in all these years. A lot has been said about MSME, so I won't go there. But on green, you're in Mumbai. This last month, we've had 2 days where Mumbai has been the most polluted city in the world. You've said a lot about green. What realistically can we do to help and try to convince industry to adopt more renewable energy in their manufacturing? First question. Second question was around anything you'd like to say on disinvestment? That was one thing that we thought we haven't heard much about. And the last question might not be related to the budget, but is there, what would your message be to the RBI and the MPC now? Given that foreign...
Just 1 minute, huh? If you permit me, because Anant is a friend, and after all, we've had kind of exchange. He represents a very powerful pillar of the democracy, so it doesn't matter if we have a little, banter with him. Where did I start? No, sorry. You spoke about disinvestment, then you also spoke about green. And you came out to something which provoked me to say this.
The MPC, your message to the RBI and MPC, given that globally we're seeing some hints of tapering of interest rate hikes.
None of you all asked me that. It takes a journalist and a businessman to do it.
I hope it's a compliment.
Yeah, it is. And I will answer it also. Don't worry. I will answer it also, but I thought I should. It's not in the minds of the businesses. It's more in the minds of the journalists. Please go on.
That's all I have to say. That's all.
You know, the concern that you've expressed about green, I fully appreciate it. You know, there was a time when we thought very landlocked kind of cities and towns are the ones which suffer from very severe air pollution and so on. I take the example of Delhi, which is unfortunately severely affected. And also very many solutions are being discussed. But we've not seen considerable progress. And there was also this feeling from people like me who come from states which have coastlines, and therefore Mumbai, that the sea does the good cleaning job for us every day. So by the evening, you get fresh air and so on. But this time, Mumbai has suffered, despite the sea and so on. So I think to answer the question, the budget does speak about it. It's not just speaking about greening ourselves. It's not speaking about transitioning into from fossil fuel to renewable. It's also talking about waste management. How you treat your liquid wastage. How do you really get to the stages of, cleaning that up so that that doesn't add to pollution of a different sort, but yet pollution. Dry waste, humongous waste in metropolitan cities where our population is such that there's a disproportionate planning for managing dry waste also. You end up having huge piles of dumps, which themselves generate certain gaseous air, which affect us. So urban planning, and I must, give a word of compliment also for the ministry. When it comes to the question of state borrowing limits, on which the center has a right to broadly direct it, borrowing has been, to a minuscule extent, linked with performance in reform, inclusive of urban planning, waste management, and so on, so many other components. Some states are very good in responding, saying, this is an opportunity for us to clean up and give better air, give a better environment, and so on. But many others don't respond. I don't attribute any malafide, but sometimes they're rather slow in responding to it. They think it's big burden on them. We are not allowing them to freely borrow and so on. But these are ways in which we are trying to incentivize both treatment of waste, better urban planning, and also making sure that effluent treatment plants are encouraged. Even if they're common effluent treatment plants, please do it. But do it because they bring a big difference. And I can tell you with my personal experience, as Commerce Minister, I had taken a bit of an initiative, not so much it was my terrain at that time, but because people accessed me and I was speaking to Niti Aayog. You would have heard of a town called Erode, which also comes in the same belt which produces textile, floor mats, upholstery, and so on. And they also were deeply into dyeing of clothes. And that area has a beautiful river called Bhavani. Bhavani River's water used to be like crystal, sweet crystal, very sweet. I remember my childhood, Bhavani water used to be, you can see it clean. And if you take it in your hand and drink it without fear, you can have a good sip of good water. Today, Bhavani, not today, years ago, decades ago, Bhavani was like, the ink that you fill in your pens. That physically you can see tangibly polluted. And of course, you don't need to drink it at all. Smell it, you're done for the day. You would have had 400 cigarette smoke. That polluted area, it was purely because of all these dyeing units pouring their effluents into the river saying it'll go away. But I was happy the industries there together came up and said, we want to have a updated, they had some effluent treatment plants, But they came together, and luckily at that time, we were very quickly able to ramp up some funds and give them something like 250 crores or something. Don't pin me down on this number, but approximately something of that kind. Today, I'm glad to say the same industry set of cluster people come and telling me water relief. It supplies usable water to their households after this. And completely the third level of recycled water is what actually goes very far away somewhere to be disposed of. The city feels very happy because it now has more water for gardening, cleaning, and other things without the river being affected so badly. And the river has actually revived itself post this. There are so many things which you can come up with solutions. The formulations and policies exist. The moment you come together and say, look, we think this will make a difference, we are here to come and help you. So I would, suggest, Anant, given your position as a leader of business and media, you should mobilize Mumbaikars, and I'm saying this with my Deputy Chief Minister here, former Chief Minister of Maharashtra here, and I'm sure we'll seek their cooperation as well. You mobilize and form clusters for waste treatment. I'm sure the state government will be quite happy to formulate and forward it to the center. And although I'm not from Maharashtra, I respect the state for very many things, inclusive of its literature, language, the dedication it has for music, the various fantastic cultural centers. Maharashtra deserves a lot more. And I'm sure Chief Minister, former Chief Minister, Deputy Chief Minister will forward your, clustered requests. And purely because of my admiration for the state, I'm not an MP from here, I'm not a whatever from here. There are stalwarts from this state. I respect all of them. But still, I'll do my little bit to make sure this is smooth fast. Mumbai deserves to have better climate. And I'm very happy you asked this question.
The next speaker is Mr. Nalin Jain.
Sorry, ma'am, just 1 minute. Did I miss out anything else you asked me? I went effusively on Mumbai and... right. Just 1 minute. On disinvestment, we have the Secretary, Deepam here.
I think the disinvestment, as ma'am also clarified, in one of the interviews, that it's actually an ongoing scheme. This is not something which is new. I mean, this is an ongoing policy, and we have several transactions which have to be taken to the logical culmination. And we also have to be mindful of the markets as well as the interest of minority shareholders. So keeping into this, we are going for a calibrated disinvestment strategy and going ahead with all the transactions.
It might help, Tuhin, if you would say those which are in the pipeline and which will find its course. Almost everything which has been approved by the cabinet is in the pipeline.
Yes.
But which are in the forefront, which are sooner to, it might help to give them a.
Now, for example, we have, some of the steel companies, like we had NMDC Steel. Now, this is, a brand new plant. It's almost going to be completed. So I think if it is taken out and we have demerged it and we have got expression of interest, so that has started moving forward. In IDBI Bank, we have the expression of interest and we have moved forward, and we are doing it with the help of RBI, proceeding ahead with that. We have got Shipping Corporation of India, where the demerger process is very advanced stage. Similarly, we have BEML, which is there. There's an HLL Life Care. We also have PDIL, a company which is there. So all of these are, moving towards at different stages. And of course, these are the ongoing transactions which were approved. And as you know, that disinvestment is also a complex process, especially when we are handing over the management control. It involves, a deeper scrutiny of the companies by the potential bidders, and then issues like, somewhere the real estate has to be taken out, and also we need cooperation from the state governments, and that's very important.
In one case, for example, in Nilachal Ispat Nigam Limited, we got excellent cooperation from Odisha government, as a result of which, there was a win-win situation. The workers got paid, everyone got paid, the mill was revived, and now it is on the growth path. So that is also very important when states and central can work together to see that this, those enterprises, they grow faster post disinvestment. That is the objective, so that the growth and the employment potential of those enterprises are maximized.
So our next speaker is Mr. Nalin Jain, ED Finance and IT of Skoda Auto Volkswagen India Private Limited.
Good morning, madam. Respected madam, senior government dignitaries, colleagues, friends. Thank you for this opportunity. I really congratulate you for the wonderful budget that has been presented. We are also thankful to the various initiatives that have been taken by the government, whether it is digitalization, tax reforms. GST was one of the biggest reforms, and I can say that it has eased our lives significantly. There were savings for the industry which were passed on to the consumers, creating a development and growth of the industry. Now, automotive industry also is one of the largest multiplier industry, madam. Close to 25% of the manufacturing GDP of the country is contributed by auto ancillaries, and its related businesses. It also generates a lot of employment. It generates a lot of investments. We are bringing in a lot of technologies from the global our parents into India. All of this needs scale, madam. It needs a lot of scale, and we are continuously now developing towards becoming greener and cleaner. We are investing into electrification of our products, etc. If I now compare, let us say, to China or to the US, we are now third largest, which is congratulations to the government and to the entire industry. But we are a far third, madam. We are close to about 3.5 million annually versus US being 15 million, China being 20 million. So there's tremendous potential for and providing safer cars to our Indian consumers. I respect also the North Minister, Mr. Gadkari, who's bringing in more norms into 6 airbags, seat belts, etc. So for all of this, scale is very crucial, madam. Our request is to look at two aspects, madam, which is the cess which was introduced for a certain period. This will really, if you look at that, it will really develop the industry. It will definitely grow the revenue for the government. It will provide safer and more affordable cars to the consumers. And with that scale, we will be able to grow the industry and create employment and investments into the country. And the second aspect is on the electrification, madam, that we are also investing heavily into the future, and that needs certain consideration in terms of testing vehicles, testing for the market, etc. So these are the two considerations we request you to please look at. Thank you so much.
Next speaker is Ms. Shikha P. Gupta, Director, Tax of Hindustan Unilever Limited, representing Bombay Chamber of Commerce and Industry.
Good morning to everybody. And a lot has been spoken about what a wonderful budget has been. But, I must compliment the FM and tell her that what a huge admirer I am of hers. And if it is even possible, it's only growing now that I'm sitting in this session. So I had a question on direct tax, which is to do with Section 194R. Ma'am, this section was introduced last year, and this was to tax perquisites and benefits. Now, this year, an amendment has been made to say that even if the perquisite or benefit is in cash, it will be covered under Section 194R. Now, what does this mean for trading liabilities, such as bad debts, which are written off? So if bad debts are written off, many times it's a unilateral action. And it's simply written off because the receivables are aging in the books and they've been sitting in the creditors' books for a long time. Now, if they've written off, there is obviously a very high probability they are irrecoverable. And there is another section, Section 41(1), where because of the remission of liability, the debtor needs to pay tax on it at some point. Now, the question is, if there is a TDS under Section 194R on this because of this amendment, then it will be a cost to the lender. The lender will have to pay this out of its own pocket. So to that extent, I think a clarification might be needed to say that bad debts are outside the purview of Section 194R. Else it will be a huge burden on many companies that are dealing with small enterprises where typically bad debts can happen. So ma'am, that was first question. My second question is a huge welcome change has come in terms of increasing or creating this JCIT appeal positions and also announcing that 100 such posts will be created. However, we do see that there also needs to be a requirement to put some kind of a time limit for disposal of appeals at the JCIT and CIT appeal level. We do recognize that it's a quasi-judicial function, so it may not be possible to stipulate a very strict limit, but some guidance is important to basically reduce the pendency. So with that and with immense thanks, I would leave you to answer this question. Thank you.
Well, you have a valid question. I mean, this is a valid problem. This has been, it's in our knowledge. We recognize that issue and we will certainly, take action. We'll provide, some relief or some clarification because obviously, if you are yourself writing it off, I mean, how do you recover, the TDS? So there is an issue. We recognize that issue and we will take appropriate action with regard to that. Second issue is with regard to the time limits. We have purposely avoided it. I do not think, setting time limits help. Putting it in the statute only to be flouted, in case you don't provide the wherewithal. And so that's what the finance minister has done in this budget, to provide the wherewithal so that, we don't have to provide limits which our officers are then unable to adhere to.
However, I mean, just to supplement that, I think one thing that we may look at is without any statutory time limits, we could look at internal monitoring of the time taken on average and have some norms for the average time that should be taken and then identify those who are exceeding those norms systematically, which we will try to do administratively.
Next speaker is Mr. Sanyam Mehra, Chairman of All India Gem and Jewelry Domestic Council.
Thank you. Hello. Thank you, ma'am, for having such an excellent budget. And I would like to thank you for doing a lot for the artisans, karigars. We have more than 60 lakhs karigars in our gem and jewelry industry. And the new youth now, which wants to come in the industry, which is going to the other industries, is again coming back to the gem and jewelry industry. I would like to talk about 3 to 4 points, mainly reduction in basic custom duty, which has been our issue since the past many years. There's a difference in 18%, which is more than 10 lakh rupees from India and international markets. The people who want to do legitimate business in our gem and jewelry trade, it becomes very difficult for them. As the other gray market, there is a difference of 4 to 5 lakh rupees at least in the market. So the people who are generally doing business legitimately, there's a lot of difficulty in doing this. There's one other gold monetization scheme. Today, we are importing more than 600 tons of gold from outside India. Under the gold monetization scheme, only 11.1 tons of gold has been able to come in the government coffers. There's more than 23,000, 24,000 tons of gold, which is there in India. So in a way of 3 ton, which is already allowed by 500 grams, some way we can get the gold monetization and the import can reduce, helping in CAD. So this is also, I think, where the gem and jewelry industry would like to help. EMI for 22 karat gold jewelry is not there. It is there for mobiles. It is there for foreign travel. But EMI for gold jewelry is not there at this moment. Credit card commission levied by banks is, we are dealing in 4 to 5% margin. When the customer and consumer comes to buy jewelry, there is a huge commission which we have to pay to the credit card companies also. So I think this can also be looked at. There is another issue, 5% or 18% on labor. This issue we are facing last 5 years back. We were made to understand, and the entire industry is falling 5% GST on labor. But somehow there is a confusion now which is coming, and there is no clarity still when we've written many times to the finance ministry also that it is 5% or it is 18%. So there's a huge confusion between us and the authorities. Also, the NRI is coming in when they are going and flocking and buying jewelry from maybe the other countries. When they come to India, they buy jewelry, which is with the handicraft industry, and generally our jewelry is bought from other countries. So when they come to India, if they can get a provision of getting a GST refund from the airport, where they can buy the jewelry from India and then they can take the refund at the airport. I think the buying can increase from the domestic retailers also. So these are my points. Thank you again.
Uh, Next speaker is Ms. Anjali Bansal, founder of Avana Capital, representing Bombay Chamber of Commerce and Industry. She's left. I think she has left, madam. I come to the next speaker, Mr. R. Srinivasan, Director of AIRA Consulting Private Limited, representing Bombay Chamber of Commerce and Industry.
Good afternoon. Voice a little hoarse, so you'll have to help me. Good afternoon. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I have two questions. I have two suggestions, not questions. One is, when the COVID struck, you had the ECLGS, which helped the working capital, alleviate the working capital stress among MSMEs. So therefore, MSMEs typically have a problem with working capital, not with long-term funds. One of the beautiful platforms that we have is Treads, which can alleviate the working capital stress. But a lot of large organizations and PSUs and state PSCs are not there, and they have not encouraged their MSMEs to upload their invoice there. So if you can encourage more and more large organizations, large corporates, MNCs who are doing business with MSMEs to approach the Treads platform, that will be very useful. The second is a problem with very, very small MSMEs. Maharashtra being the hub of MSMEs, we have Thane, we have Vasai Virar, we have Palghar, as well as 5 crores, 10 crores kind of people. But the second generation is not interested in that kind of a business. So they either go abroad or they work in IT firms and things like that. That asset goes waste when the owner decides not to, he cannot pursue it further. So can there be a policy intervention to say some kind of merger acquisition for these kind of companies so that the asset doesn't go waste? But more importantly, they provide a lot of employment for unskilled labor. And if the owner decides not to continue with that, then that entire business, it affects employment. So those are my two suggestions. If you could please take it on board. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Now we'll be taking only a...
The suggestion which came that how we can facilitate credit flow or the working capital which can be locked up with the MSMEs. Treads obviously is the one platform where few things are on the anvil. But equally important is the account segregator to invoice-based lending. And basic building blocks are in place. There are a few issues to be sorted out in the coming months. We should be seeing much larger volumes coming up under the account. So then the MSMEs will have a choice. They can just approach it on an account segregator. At this point of time, it is not very smooth to just small value items to get it through account segregator model, but it should be coming up in the coming months.
Ajay, you should also be telling about the way in which we have said no cash but accrual system for the large companies to not have any offset till they pay up. As and when they pay up is when they can claim the offset.
This budget has brought it in the part B that unless a large company has paid or if they have delayed beyond 45 days, they can't take it up as an expense for the purpose of income tax. So that itself will also, there's an add-on. These are not the two related one, but that will also bring a discipline that somebody has to certify, their own chartered accountant will have to certify that there are known dues to MSMEs for which the claims are being made as an expense.
On your point on mergers and acquisitions, are you asking for something in taxation, or what is it that you think the government should do? So it is not a tax issue?
It is not a tax issue, sir.
Okay,
It's
you're saying, is there some, but what do you think the government can do? These are private parties, need to be taken over by another private party. The government has difficulty even doing its own work. Now, this you want us to...
No. I only want to raise this point. So if there is some way that we can sit down and think, because otherwise that asset goes waste and the employment gets affected.
Understood.
That's my
Thank
only
you.
request.
Thank you.
No, I think it is it's a fair point that you're raising. But all of us can come up with our own solutions to it.
Absolutely.
Eventually, it's a question of the fact that there is a unit which is likely to be closed and its valuation will come to zero if nobody is going to encash on it or, replace the promoter with somebody else. There should be a marketplace for it.
Precisely.
We should create a base where people who are interested in a particular sector, small unit, can find that it is available. I would think that's the immediate requirement so that there is a legitimate marketplace created so that people can go and find and then start negotiating with a concerned party.
Precisely. That's the kind of thing.
Right. Okay.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot.
Ma'am, if you permit, on the gems and jewelry, there were some comments and some questions asked. Three things I would like to submit over here. The first thing is that, we do not find, we did a study, the GST, CBIC, they did a study spanning a period of over about 15 years or so. And we did not find any correlation between increased or higher customs duties and higher smuggling. So there is no correlation, that we have. And so while duties have been increased, we don't think, that that is going to actually increase smuggling. So this is point number one. Point number two is on GST. Some clarification is needed on the making charges. We will provide that. That's not actually a budget thing. And thirdly, I would like to inform you that you mentioned about GST refunds being made to foreigners. We are working very actively on that. And it will be our attempt that shortly, quickly, we are able to facilitate refunds quickly for foreigners on the GST paid. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, ma'am, we go ahead with the next. We have just time for one or two questions more. My next speaker is Mr. Praveen Vashisht, Chairman, India of Howden Insurance Brokers India Private Limited, representing Bombay Chambers of Commerce and Industry.
Thank you for the opportunity, ma'am. First of all, I want to say how grateful we are to the Department of Financial Services for soliciting comments in December on what we think are very strategic opportunities in the insurance sector, such as introduction of captives and allowing composite licenses for insurers to operate both in the life insurance and general insurance and health segment. I just have a humble suggestion, and this is to promote health insurance, especially amongst retail individual consumers. And this is a request to consider reduction in GST from 18 to 5%, if not for institutional buyers, but for the retail investors. Thank you, ma'am.
And now, last but not the least question, Mr. Viraj Kulkarni, CEO and founder of Pivot Management Consulting OPC Private Limited, representing Bombay Chamber of Commerce and Industry.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Let me first compliment you on a very amazing visionary announcement that you made. And I'll mention that a little more. So your announcement of creating the Takshila, if I may say so, Takshila of securities market is really commendable. And this is regarding the certification course that you talked about in the securities industry. Why this is important is the industry I come from is of a size $246 trillion across 108 countries. And this industry does not have a certificate course. And I've been discussing with some of the global bodies how to do it. And that's why this announcement, this visionary statement that you made is really going to help us to build skill, cut cost, and probably become what we did with the IT industry. I think that's compliment. And if we can develop this, this can be really great for the industry. The second one I have is with regard to the foreign portfolio investors. In the last 1 year, we have seen the highest number of FPIs coming into the country. Besides, T+1 has made us a global leader. There are a lot of such positive stories about our country. Maybe it's time for us to look at, having a convention like many other countries have, which can be a permanent event, And we have IFSC, we have T+1, we have the infrastructure, which can have an exposition and that can really promote. The second one is almost about 9 years ago, a delegation went and met with 700 plus FPIs. I think time's come with all the positives that you brought to probably do it again. And I'm sure at least 1,500 will be wanting to attend it. Thank you.
With that, we come to the last question. And now I thank the Honorable Finance Minister, the respected dignitaries on the dais, and the invitees.
Ma'am, I would like the Deputy Chief Minister of Maharashtra to say a few words.
बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। वैसे तो बजट पर मैंने बजट के दिन ही शाम को 1 घंटे का भाषण दिया और मुंबई ने उसको सुना भी है। लेकिन since all the stakeholders are here from the different industries, I would also like to compliment on behalf of state government, क्योंकि जिस प्रकार से मुझे ऐसा लगता है कि स्टेट गवर्नमेंट्स को साथ में लेकर अभी केंद्र सरकार काम कर रही है, वो बहुत महत्वपूर्ण है। और विशेष रूप से मैं धन्यवाद देना चाहूँगा जो आपने योजना लाई है, इसमें आप स्टेट्स को 50 इयर्स का इंटरेस्ट फ्री लोन दे रहे हो कैपिटल इन्वेस्टमेंट के लिए। और मुझे ऐसा लगता है कि वो बहुत बड़ा इंसेंटिव है कि जिसमें हम लोग हमारी जो कैपेक्स रिक्वायरमेंट है उसको भी पूरा कर सकते हैं। और उसमें आपने जो टाइम लिमिट रखी हुई है जिसके कारण हम लोग बिल्कुल स्टिपुलेटेड टाइम में उसको खर्चा कर रहे हैं, तो मुझे ऐसा लगता है कि इससे बहुत बड़े पैमाने पर जो हमारा कैपिटल निवेश है वो भी बढ़ रहा है। और उसके साथ साथ मुझे ऐसा लगता है कि अलग अलग योजनाएं जो तैयार की गई है विशेष रूप से राज्यों के लिए, मैं ऐसा मानता हूँ कि अब राज्यों को वो किस पार्टी का राज्य है इसकी ओर न देखते हुए जो परफॉर्म कर सकता है उसके लिए योजना तैयार हुई है। और इसलिए हमारा तो प्रयास यही होगा, आप सुबह भी मेरी बजट की बैठक हुई तो मैंने मेरे अधिकारियों को यही कहा कि अब इतनी अलग अलग योजनाएं केंद्र सरकार ने घोषित की है, सबसे पहले अपने प्रपोजल्स उसमें दीजिए ताकि ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा हमारे प्रपोजल्स मंजूर होकर आए और महाराष्ट्र को ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा बेनिफिट ये उसके माध्यम से मिले। और मुझे लगता है कैपिटल इन्वेस्टमेंट 10 लाख करोड़ ये शायद 2-4 साल पहले हमने कभी सोचा ही नहीं था कि हम वी वुड बी एबल टू अचीव दिस। और ये दिखाई पड़ रहा है ज़मीन पर। और इस साल मुझे लगता है कि केंद्र के साथ साथ राज्यों को भी बहुत मेहनत करनी पड़ेगी, क्योंकि आप पैसा तो दोगे लेकिन अगर हम खर्चा नहीं कर पाए तो मुझे ऐसा लगता है कि दैट विल गो वेस्ट। सो आई वुड लाइक टू एश्योर यू ऑन द बिहाफ ऑफ गवर्नमेंट ऑफ महाराष्ट्र दैट वी आर एब्सोल्युटली रेडी, वी आर वेरी कीन। एंड जो प्राइम मिनिस्टर साहब का विजन है और आपका विजन है, उस विजन के साथ महाराष्ट्र बिल्कुल तेजी से आगे बढ़ेगा। थैंक यू।
Thank you, sir. I thank the Honorable Finance Minister, all the respected dignitaries on the dais, and the invitees today for making the interactive session mutually enriching and meaningful. I also have a word to add here. The questions which could not be taken up, you could forward those questions at mumbai.dcit.hq.quad@incometax.gov.in and we shall forward them to the ministry. I now hand over the mic to Megha.
I thank the Honorable Finance Minister, Srimati Nirmala Sitharaman, Honorable Minister of State Finance, Shri Pankaj Chaudhary, Honorable Minister of State Finance, Dr. Bhagwat Kishan Rao Karad, Honorable Deputy CM of Maharashtra, Shri Devendra Fadnavis, the dignitaries on the dais, Member of Legislative Assembly, Shri Mangal Prabhat Lodha, and all the distinguished invitees for a very fruitful, productive, and engaging session. With this session now draws to a close. I would request everyone to kindly rise for the national anthem.